Attention passengers, we ask that you please fasten your seatbelts at this time and secure all baggage underneath your seat or in the overhead compartments. Flyover Country with Scott Jennings is prepared for takeoff.
Thanks for joining us on the Flyover Country podcast. I'm Scott Jennings, your host. We're glad you're with us. We're talking about politics and American public affairs with a Middle America flavor. And today, it's an honor for me to have on a personal friend and someone I look up to a great deal in the media business, Jake Tapper, who is the chief Washington correspondent for CNN and host of The Lead on CNN, which airs every day from 4 to 6 o'clock. And it's an honor for me to be on Jake's show from time to time. And Jake, thanks for being with us today.
It's great to have you. Let us know next time you're in town. We love having you on.
Yeah, I love stopping by now that we can actually do these things in person. It's a lot more fun being back in the studio. Jake, I wanted to have you on because part of the reason I've launched this podcast is I want to have conversations with people like you, hopefully for an audience that I think often is ignored, frankly, by American politics and some media types. And that's sort of just the middle America political audience, the flyover country audience. And I think the disconnect that exists between flyover audiences and the coastal audiences needs to be bridged. And I think people like you can do that, frankly. And having known you over the years and having been part of your show, I think you're one of the unique voices that can help bridge that gap. And I wanted to start with just a sort of a big but basic question. And I think this is how a lot of people out here, and I'm in Louisville, and this is how a lot of people out in the middle of the country feel right now. And it's essentially this: America's off the rails. And I think a lot of liberals on the coast felt that way when Donald Trump was the president. America's off the rails. And so now you have these competing groups of people who just perpetually go back and forth wondering, is America off the rails? And so as you cover our politics, I just sort of wanted to ask you, do you feel like we're off the rails right now compared to what you've known and covered for your career?
I mean, compared to what, I don't know. I mean, there are parts of our politics that feel off the rails right now, that feel out of control, if that's what that means, that there's no methodical way that it's proceeding. I don't like it when it feels like in Washington, when it feels like it's a narrow split, right? I mean, the House and the Senate. I don't like it when I feel like the Republicans are in power and they're just ignoring what the Democrats think, and the Democrats are in power and they're just ignoring what the Republicans think. It's not really how the system is supposed to work. It is built to encourage compromise, or at least it was originally. I think there are a lot of things, especially gerrymandering and redistricting that has made that difficult. I think theoretically it would be good if every member of the House and Senate had to, try to appeal to voters from the other party when they run for elections, so that they at least can try to hear their concerns. So I never feel like Washington is working the way it needs to, but I don't know that I've ever felt that it works the way that it needs to, because there are all these competing imperatives. I look at Trump's tariff policy or Biden's Build Back Better bill and think, wow, this is really off the rails. I mean, those are just policy efforts, policy disagreements, this and that. I think there are, a large part of why Donald Trump was not reelected did not actually have to do with his policies. It had to do, with a couple exceptions. I don't think family separation at the border, or how he personally, as opposed to his administration, handled the COVID crisis. But I think a lot of that had to do with him personally. So yes, I think it's off the rails, but I haven't felt it's ever, I don't know, I can't recall a time that it was ever on the rails.
I think part of what I mean by the question is when you assume something is off the rails, or if you believe we're now operating outside of the normal guardrails, it causes you to do things that you wouldn't ordinarily do. Like, I don't know, chase Kirsten Sinema into a bathroom with a camera, or it might cause you to openly defy a congressional subpoena and dare somebody to come at, so the things you would normally just say, well, I'm not going to film somebody in the bathroom, or, well, of course, if I get a subpoena, I'll reply to it. All of a sudden, there's a whole new world of possibilities where you don't have to play by any kind of rules at all. And you've got a whole group of people cheering you on saying, well, the other guys don't play by any rules either, so we shouldn't partake. And I'm
Yeah.
I'm a little fearful that you've got a whole sort of group of people in the country who think, well, I have to get up and go to work every day. I have to play by my rules that are set up for my life. But we have all these political actors out there who appear not to have to play by any rules. And I wonder about the effect on our culture, where you sort of have a creeping idea that, well, maybe there aren't any rules anymore. Maybe the laws don't apply anymore. Maybe our constitutional guardrails are just not all that relevant to today's American culture. This probably goes beyond politics, frankly.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there is a degree to which people are trying to behave performatively for a very small audience. Whether it is, look, the protester that followed Senator Sinema into the restroom, I think it's the following into the restroom that is the issue. It's not a protester confronting Senator Sinema in a nonviolent way, but with her issues, whatever her concerns were. I think that it was about immigration. I'm not 100% sure, so I apologize if I got that wrong. But certainly petitioning the government and freedom of the speech. I mean, my son is in 6th grade and he has a test today on the Constitution, and so I've been going over these wonderful uh, rights enshrined in this document and explaining what they mean to a 12-year-old. This means that you have the right to say whatever you want within reason. You can't libel somebody, but this means that you can petition the government. This means you can assemble. You're not allowed to prevent people from protesting. They're allowed to protest. It's in the Constitution. It's in the Bill of Rights. So I don't begrudge people exercising those rights. There is a question of what is performatively actually damaging to your cause if you're trying to achieve something. So let's say that, again, I'm not 100% well versed on this one protester confronting Senator Sinema, but assuming she was talking about immigration, assuming she was talking about the need for, in her view, a more humane immigration policy, assuming she was talking about wanting to have protections for the dreamers, wanting to have protections for undocumented immigrants, whatever it was, that is a legitimate thing to exercise one's free speech, petition, assembly, etc. And there's nothing illegal about following somebody into the restroom, but it just like turns off anybody that you're trying to win over. And I think that's one of the things that's been lost in the last, it's not just the last 5 years, but it's certainly been sped up. The idea of, Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, I don't know who she's trying to appeal to. I assume it is her congressional district and the Team MAGA people. And I just cannot fathom having this position as a member of Congress and thinking that your entire job is just to own the libs, is just to
I think
troll people.
the performative issue is, to
Yeah.
me, is not, we've birthed all these national celebrities. And so if you represent a congressional district like Marjorie Taylor Greene does, she's less concerned about that and more concerned about being a national celebrity for the purpose
Right.
of consolidating approval and support from people who don't live in her congressional district. And of course, they can donate to her, and they do, and they have liberally. She's raised a ton of money from around the country from that group, and so we've sort of moved from parochial congressmen who are desperately trying to get the road built in their district, all the way to sort of people who are, trying to they're not mini Trumps, but they're, they view themselves as national celebrities in the same way we did, frankly.
But my point is, what a waste.
Yeah.
I mean, that a congressional seat, and everybody should work. I don't really actually believe this, but it would be very eye-opening if every American had to work for a member of Congress or member of the Senate at some point, because most of the job is not tweeting, not dragging people on social media, not creating viral moments. Most of the job is tending to the needs of your constituents. They didn't get their social security check. They're trying to get into the military academy. They need help with this. the opioid crisis is destroying their town, whatever it is. And that's what the job is supposed to be. And it is sad when you see members of Congress squander that and think that that's not what the job is. The job is to get on Hannity. The job is to get a friendly tweet from Trump or whatever the Democratic equivalent is. And although I don't think it's entirely the same thing, because I see people comparing AOC to Marjorie Taylor Greene, and to be completely candid, like whatever you think of AOC's politics, I don't think it's fair because she actually does the work. If you follow her on Instagram or Twitter, you see she's actually out in her district meeting people, et cetera. So, but that said, obviously there are people on the left who are the equivalent trying to get likes and follows, and it's such a waste. This is what I think when I see other anchors, not at CNN, obviously, taking their show and turning it into an hour-long troll fest of whatever the opposite side is politically, and it's just like you can do anything you want with your show, you know.
I think there are similarities in these personalities you mentioned, but there's one key difference, and I wanted you to sort of analyze this for me, because I really do think that the purpose of political parties heretofore has largely been the same. Well, we're just going to try to win the election, and then we'll sort out the policies afterwards. But now I really do think for Republicans, the idea that you would win to govern is secondary to the idea that you would, I don't know if own the libs is the right term, but it's certainly something more cultural than winning for the purpose of governing. And we're not organized necessarily around a platform. I mean, we didn't have a platform last year. And so as quaint as that sounds, but the Democrats, who do have national celebrities, you mentioned one of them, they are organized for the purpose of trying to win to govern, and they are hyper focused on a policy agenda.
Right.
I hate it. It's not something I'm going to be for, but you have to admire it that they actually came to the table with a list of things. Here's the things we want enacted into law. And this is the key difference, I think, right now in the parties. The motivating group in the Democratic Party has those things they want to become law. The Republicans, I'm not sure what we want to become law, and I'm not sure on any given day any of the leadership knows either. And so I wonder though what you think about that. One party that's sort of post policy and one party that's all policy right now.
I don't know that I agree 100%, because I know that there are serious-minded legislators on the Republican side, and I'm sure you agree with that. But there is an overarching look. I don't think the American people know what's in the Build Back Better bill or the infrastructure bill, and that is a communication failure by Democrats. But they're having a big policy debate now. Maybe it needs to be more. We need to have the public needs to have a better understanding of what exactly is in this bill, and certainly it's important for people in the news media to do our part and make sure people understand what's going on here, whether or not they agree with it, what the money is going to be spent on, et cetera. Should childcare be means tested is an important question, I think. And, you see Democrats having this debate. And so I agree with that. And I don't know what Republicans want to do. Like the Republicans the likelihood is that they will take back the House next year, just in terms of historical trends. Other than, and we can talk about this, other than eroding the democratic process, I don't know what McCarthy and Scalise and Stefanik stand for. And other than attacking Joe Biden, which is fine, it doesn't offend me, I don't care. But like, what do they stand for? And so I mean, in that sense, I guess I agree. But I do know that there are serious policy people in the House Republican caucus and in the Senate Republican caucus. Your old boss, Mitch McConnell, obviously has a great deal he wants to accomplish. But on the other hand, it does seem like his main priority is judges, right? And that is, as my son and I have been going over in the last week, that is a responsibility of the U.S. Senate. That is only the responsibility of the U.S. Senate to confirm judge nominees. But what else? What else is there? Like infrastructure, like our infrastructure is crumbling. I mean, this is not Democrat or Republican. You're in Kentucky, so you know this because because there's a lot of infrastructure that needs work in Kentucky and in Southern Ohio. But like, that's just a need. I mean, we can't have bridges that continue to fall. So but I don't hear a lot about that from, other than the work on the bipartisan infrastructure bill, from Republicans.
Yeah, I think the problem is that the leader of the party he's not personally motivated by a policy agenda. He didn't have a policy agenda. Yeah, I mean, he didn't really run on a policy agenda. He got a few things done, and I've been, I think he deserves credit for nominating good judges. I think he deserves credit for the tax cuts. But especially as he got to the end of his term, he was really more aligned with Schumer and Pelosi, on policy at the end, and really sort of unaligned with McConnell and the Republican leadership as it related to the checks and other things. And so I just think he was lurching from one and grasping and groping for some kind of a policy agenda. That leaves the rest of the Republicans who sort of follow him to wonder, well, should I have a platform here? What should I be for? And am I worried it's going to be pulled out from under me tomorrow because the guy running my party changes his mind about it? And I think the Democrats don't really have that problem. In their hearts, they're progressive. They largely agree. Yeah. Yeah. So I just think that's totally different motivations for running a party right now, achieving this. Yeah. And so. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I sort of read an analysis the other day. I mean, the Republicans were 90,000 votes from controlling all three levers.
Yeah.
And now Democrats control all three levers. I mean, the biggest issue that he missed on, where he could have led the Republicans anywhere, was on immigration. And in fact, I think at one point had the Democrats talked into funding his wall. We had a deal for Dreamers. I mean, the whole thing was on the table, and he just couldn't allow it to happen. It was really, he could have gotten every Republican to go along with it.
That's Trump afraid of his base. He was afraid of his base. He leads his base, but he also fears his base. And there are things that he could have done and could have led the base along. Yeah, sure, you would have lost Ann Coulter, but you would have kept Hannity. You would have gotten 2/3 of Fox prime time on your side. Look, we're going to solve this problem. We're going to build the wall, and we're going to create a very difficult path to citizenship for the undocumented. And we're going to, and that's it. And immigration's done. We're taking this issue off the table for Democrats. And he's at least shaking it up. He could have done that. Absolutely. That was a squandered opportunity. But I am convinced it was because he was afraid of his base. He was afraid of his base rejecting him. Brad Parscale would say to him, for instance, when I think the FDA outlawed flavored e-cigs during his final year because of all the childhood smoking that it encouraged. And ultimately, he was talked out of it by Parscale, who said, "Your base, loves e-cigs, or they don't want you to do this, or whatever it is." And he wouldn't lead them on issues like that.
He knew. I think he always knew how, and I think he knows today how powerful and influential he is. But I don't think when he was the president, he ever fully grasped just how powerful.
Yeah, I think that's right.
I think I agree with what you're saying. I think he feared these people abandoning him, but I don't think he ever understood that I don't think they ever would have, because the coming fight was always going to bring them home. It's us versus them. That was always going to be the reelection campaign.
Right.
And so even if they were displeased about this, that, or the other, where were they going to go? You know, if you loved Donald Trump in 2016, you weren't switching to Joe Biden or in 2020. And so, in my opinion,
Some people did.
But on a policy choice, I mean, like if he had decided to fix immigration or build infrastructure, you think people would have switched away? I mean, I don't.
Oh, no, I don't. No. They had nowhere to go. If they thought, no, of course, right. If they thought Trump was being too liberal on immigration, there was nowhere to go. Nowhere. Right. Yeah. I mean, and again, there was a deal to be cut. I always feel like this. It's so frustrating covering immigration reform, which I've been doing now for decades, because there is a deal to be cut. Just, make the wall impenetrable, and then, create some humane policies for the people who are undocumented, and fix the system. But it's tough work, and nobody wants to do it. And it requires you, if you're a legislator in the Senate, it requires you to agree to stuff that you hate in order to get the stuff that you want. You're not going to be able to seal the border and make it tougher for undocumented immigrants to get into the country without a more humane policy. If you're a conservative, without a more humane policy for those who are in this country, I mean, you have to give. And right now, the incentive structure in this country is against compromise. Because look at the difficulty in Democrats even just agreeing with each other.
Yeah. Let me ask you. We're gonna take a break, but before we go to the break, do you think if we had a snap election right now, do you think Donald Trump would beat Joe Biden in an election right now?
It depends on turnout. If all the people who voted in 2020 voted today, which is because these elections are all turnout, so that's a huge hypothetical. I don't know. The margins were so narrow in those states, in Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Georgia, and Arizona. I don't know. I never sensed a tremendous enthusiasm for Joe Biden. It was more an exhaustion with Trump. And Trump did make inroads with certain groups. I mean, that's the thing that's so crazy about, like when he's alleging all this fraud in Philadelphia, my hometown. He did better in Philadelphia in 2020 than he did in 2016. And for a Republican, he didn't do so bad in 2016 compared to Romney or McCain. So he made inroads not just with white working class voters, but with black working class voters, with Latino working class voters. So just imagining, like, if he hadn't done what he did with COVID, and if he had pushed infrastructure and immigration reform, I think he would have expanded the tent greatly. But he never understood that it's not his politics, the politics of addition, right? It's his is the politics of us versus them, and that was always the problem.
I wondered if he is the only Republican that could have actually beaten Hillary. I look at how he won. He obviously didn't win the popular vote, but the way he won the election, and in some ways they needed each other. He was the only one that, you know what I mean? They were perfectly suited for. I'm not sure. I don't know if another Republican would have beaten her or not. I really, I wonder about this. I don't know.
I don't think Biden was any super strong candidate. I just think he offered a comfortable place for suburban voters to go.
And where are they now? I mean, there's a lot of evidence that maybe they're having buyer's remorse.
Yeah, and I don't know how they would vote today, but I don't sense. I mean, he's off Twitter, and he's not, so you don't see unless you're watching One America News, I don't know that you're seeing his rallies. So maybe the things he did that so offended the suburban voters that ultimately delivered Pennsylvania to Biden, maybe they're out of mind. I mean, the American people have a pretty short memory. I don't know if there was a snap election. I don't. It's an interesting question.
Yeah. We're going to take a quick break. When I come back, we're going to ask Jake Tapper about moderating debates, which is fascinating to me. Thanks for being with us on the Flyover Country podcast.
Do not leave vehicles unattended. Yes, even you.
Thanks for being with us on the Flyover Country podcast. And our guest today is Jake Tapper from CNN, host of The Lead from 4 to 6 every day. And Jake, thanks for spending time with us.
For the record, I have flown to Louisville. I'm sure I've flown over it too, but I've also flown to Kentucky.
Yeah, good. I'm glad you were here once. Okay.
More than once.
I have been an admirer of your ability to moderate debates. You did one in 2016 primary. I think this is like very, very obscure, but I think one of the best debates we ever had on CNN was the 2018 Florida governor contest between DeSantis and Gillum.
DeSantis, right. DeSantis and Gillum. Sorry, I'd done the Rick Scott Christ one 4 years before. Right.
I thought they were both great for what they were trying to accomplish. I thought you were great. And so I wanted to ask you, how much time do you spend preparing for these things, and what's your process to go through with it? And then, it's obviously different when you've got one-on-one versus 20 people on a stage, but I was sort of curious to know if you could give us some insights on how do you prepare for it and what are you trying to get out of it?
Well, the CNN team is amazing. And there is no other team with whom I'd rather prepare for a debate. I mean, we do mock debates, and it's, some of the smartest producers in the world pretending to be candidates just to prepare you for what they might say. And this is, we do this over and over for these debates, whether it's, 11 candidates on stage or just 2. I do prefer 2. It is much easier, and it's a better debate. That Simi Valley debate at the Reagan Library in 2015, where we had 11 candidates on stage, was a 3-hour debate, and which is trying to give a lot of time, but it's ultimately just a huge competition for time. And I'm just trying to involve everybody and get as many answers as possible and have people confront each other on their differences. So that's the goal. One of the most challenging parts of moderating a debate is managing the time, because every politician wants to go over, well, except for Joe Biden, every politician wants to go over their time limit. You might remember in 2019 and 2020, Biden would stop 10 seconds early. I think people got inside his brain so much and said, you talk too much, you're too garrulous, you're too loquacious, that ultimately he started nipping himself in the bud 15 seconds earlier than before he had to. Anyway, the goal is just to try to get them to confront each other on policy issues and have people understand the differences. And the biggest challenge is managing the time. I remember at the Detroit debate we did with a bunch of Democratic candidates. It was me, Dana Bash, and Don Lemon. And, I am kind of tough on the time. When they're out of time, I'll say, "Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Senator." And, I see the tweets afterwards. People don't like it. But at the same time, the choice is let them go on, in which case you don't ultimately ask the question about, I don't know, education or nuclear power or whatever that you want to get to. And then you get accused of letting some people talk too long and other people. I mean, it's a no-win situation. And for me, I think that, cutting them off or giving them a warning that they need to stop is the best way to do it. Although sometimes people don't like it.
Do you often hear from the candidates or the campaigns after the debate saying, "Man, that really sucked. You screwed me," or you played it fair," or did they just move on?
Generally speaking, people are pretty nice. I will say, without naming names, that after the Reagan Library debate, which you might remember, Donald Trump at that point, this was August or September, and he was number 1 in the polls. He had been number 1 in the polls since July. And the people who are ahead in the polls tend to get more time than the people who are not. That doesn't mean that that people don't get an opportunity. They do. But that said, generally speaking, the bigger candidates in terms of support get more time. It's not equal throughout 10 candidates. It will be by the end of the night, generally speaking, the amount of time they get reflects their standing in the polls too. So I will say that after the Simi Valley debate, I heard from a few uh, Republicans who objected to us treating Donald Trump as if he was the front runner, which he was, and
He was the front runner.
they
Yeah.
did not like it, and a lot of them ultimately became Trump's biggest sycophants, without even like the most shameless sycophants. And I would never reveal their identities or release
Yeah.
their emails about the nasty things they had to say about Trump when we just treated him like the front runner he was. But boy, those were some U-turns we saw.
Yeah, I remember being told by a number of people, "I'll never work for that guy. I'll never work for that guy."
Well, some
2
people
weeks
did,
later.
but a lot of people did. Honestly,
Well,
like it is almost pathological that some of the most public people who opposed him in the primaries became some of the most public, shameless factotums, and just ultimately removed their spines and other organs that suggest courage and signed up.
yeah. I wanted to ask you about your books because you've been writing books, and people seem to like them, and seem like you're enjoying that. You were a print journalist. You went to TV, and just sort of curious to know, why did you ultimately decide to start writing again? What caused you to choose, fictional books with sort of a historical underpinning? And I think you just signed to write a couple of more, right?
Well, the book that means the most to me is a nonfiction book I wrote that came out about 9 years ago called The Outpost, about Afghanistan, and that's a true story. And I would write another nonfiction book, but it would have to be about a subject I really really care about and want to tell. I was offered some serious money to write a Trump book, but ultimately I didn't want to do that, and I knew there were lots of Trump books coming out by lots of excellent reporters, and I just didn't want to look backward, and that wouldn't be the same thing as telling the heroic tale of soldiers in combat. I started writing fiction because it was kind of fun. That's all. It was just a fun project and a fun challenge. I'm a history buff, so combining real stories with fake stories is fun, and that's really all it is. It's enjoyable to me. If people stop buying them, then I'll stop writing them. But as long as they let me do it, it's fun to do.
The Outpost was made into a movie.
Yeah.
How involved were you behind the camera? I mean, obviously you wrote the material, but were you there on set every day? I mean, how did you go about the movie making process?
So Rod Lurie directed it, and a couple guys named Paul Tamasy and Eric Johnson wrote the script. I was an executive producer of the project, so I looked at the script during different iterations. I kind of served as a representative of the film project to a lot of the soldiers and families who actually served there, so that they knew what was going on. That we had a private Facebook group, and I would like share what was going on, and if people had concerns or issues, I would talk to them about it. I put some of the soldiers that actually served at Combat Outpost Keating in touch with the director, Rod, and a few of them were in the film or contributed to the film in various ways. One guy, Dan Rodriguez, played himself. I visited the set. It wasn't necessary. They didn't need me, but it was in my contract that I got to do it. So my family and I went to Bulgaria, which doubled as Afghanistan, and we went there and met some of the actors and saw some of the shooting, and it was cool. Basically, I just wanted to make sure that the film was as close to true as it could be. And Rod Lurie, the director, is a West Point grad, and he very much cared about that. The biggest um, literary license that was taken in the film was some of the people from 2006 and some of the people who the story is basically, the movie is basically just about the attack in 2009, this overwhelming attack of
Yeah.
300 or 400 insurgents against 53 American soldiers in this outpost at the bottom of three steep mountains. But the Outpost, my book is about all 4 years of the Outpost, why they built it, what they did while they were there, what they accomplished, and then this big battle. And so the biggest literary license that Rod Lurie took was he took one of the characters from 2006 and one of the characters from 2008, and he put them in the unit so as to tell their stories too. But generally, it was pretty true to what happened. And when we showed the film to survivors and Gold Star families in 2019, before it came out, we went. I was very nervous, and we went around afterwards, and they all felt the families of the fallen and others felt good about the project. They thought it was pretty faithful to what really happened.
And you have one in process right now, or you're about to start writing another one?
I just started writing a third novel. Yeah, the process I usually go through is I just think about it and what I want to do, and then I work on an outline for months, and then I show the outline to the editor, and then I start writing. And so I'm almost done with chapter 2, so that's where I am.
All right, we are close to the end of the show, but before you go, you have to participate in the famous lightning round. So,
okay.
Short answers or one word answers only. Number 1, will Donald Trump be the Republican nominee in 2024?
Yes.
Favorite movie?
Oh, favorite movie? Goodfellas.
Most memorable thing that ever happened to you live on the air?
Most memorable thing that ever happened to me live on the air? Stephen Miller having a little temper tantrum of some sort. I don't know exactly what you would call it, but that was pretty memorable. I don't know. Can you think of a better example? I'm looking at it.
The one where the guy that doesn't really
Oh, maybe the one where the guy from the guy that spoke for the Roy Moore campaign thought that it was the law that you had to be sworn into office on a Christian Bible, and I explained to him that it wasn't. You didn't actually have to be sworn in on anything. You could be sworn in on a mug, and his face went so. There was like a moment of brain freeze that I thought the satellite had broken, and like it was just like. But anyway, maybe that was the most memorable. That's the one I hear from. I still hear about years later.
Interesting.
It was almost like an SNL skit.
All right, it's been in the news lately. This may have changed your opinion. Who broke up the Beatles, John or Paul?
I don't know why this is controversial. John broke up the. I mean, it's always been John. John broke. I mean, but I never thought anything. I guess I was a Beatles fan as a kid, so I always knew that John broke up the Beatles, and I don't understand why this is controversial. This is just a fact. It's, by the way, that's his right. He doesn't. There's no law saying he has to play for the Beatles. It's too bad he didn't. But yeah, I mean, maybe there should be one, but there wasn't one. Oh, I've never been to a Texas State Fair, so I would go to Texas just because I've been to the Iowa State Fair a million times. So that's why.
You've been stranded on a desert island for the rest of your life, and you can choose but one companion. It will be A, Wolf Blitzer, or B, Anderson Cooper.
Well, Anderson's younger, so you got to go with the younger guy, right? And Anderson's like really, he's very strong. He's very fit. I mean, I could probably make him build the lean-to and everything. That's not to say that I wouldn't love having Wolf there as well, but
you're going to hear about it today when you hand off the show. It's going to be
well. I just don't know how long I'm going to be on this desert island. I would expect Wolf to pick Anderson too. Let me say that, and I'm younger than Anderson, so let me put it that way.
All right.
It's okay to pick Anderson.
You gotta grab a soft drink out of the fridge. What is it?
I don't drink soda, really. Do I have to drink it? I mean, I drink water.
I gave it up. I went to Club Soda this year. If you're going to grab a book off the shelf,
it's the soda that probably is the way that you lost all that weight, right?
It's bad for you. It's bad for you. You grab a book off the shelf. Fiction or nonfiction?
Fiction.
Fiction. Biggie or Tupac?
Oh, I mean, I guess. Well, I like them both, really. Tupac, I guess.
See, the thing about this show is there's only certain things in the middle of roads, Jake Pepper, and that's dead squirrels and yellow lines. And so you really have to.
But I am professionally as agnostic as I can about many, many things. Like I don't have a position on the Build Back Better bill, and I listen to both Biggie and Tupac. But I guess ultimately, ultimately, I guess I like Tupac better.
Yeah. Oh, okay. All right. You've made a return visit to Kentucky. You've picked a bourbon at the bar. Which is it?
Say that again.
You've come to Kentucky. You've made a return visit. You've ordered a bourbon at the bar.
Oh,
Which brand is it?
what kind of bourbon is it? It's a really good question. I mean, if I'm just walking into a bar, I would probably, I don't know, Woodford Reserve.
Yeah, Woodford Reserve. That's a good choice. All right, final one. Is there someone out there that you've never had on the show, you've never interviewed, but you've dreamed of interviewing them, and you can plead for them to come on right now?
I would love to have the Pope come on. I think he'd be a fascinating interview. We've tried to get him. He's not an easy get. So that would be good. I mean, I've interviewed both Trump and Biden, so I mean, I would take either one of them, but I haven't done the Pope, so I guess the Pope.
The Pope. All right, Jake Tapper, you're a good sport for the lightning round. Thank you for being here, and thanks everyone
Scott.
for listening. Yeah, appreciate you being with me, and thanks everyone for listening to the Flyover Country podcast. Join us again in the future for more exciting guests. Jake, terrific job. Appreciate it, man.
Ladies and gentlemen, make sure your seat backs and folding trays are in their full upright position. Cabin crew, please take your seats for landing, and thank you for choosing Flyover Country with Scott Jennings.